Oh, we've all been there, right? That gut punch feeling of a major loss. Could be a breakup, could be a huge professional setback. It doesn't matter. It's this universal pain that's so intense, it feels like the world is literally ending. But what if I told you there's a way to actually architect your way out of that pain?
So let's just get right into it, because this is a question that I think we've all asked ourselves. Why does this hurt so much? That feeling, it's not just in your head. It's this deep, all-consuming ache that feels so incredibly real. Because, well, in a lot of ways, it is. And to really get why, we've got to look at what's actually going on inside our brains.
All right, so your brain on heartbreak. The answer to all this pain lies in the fascinating and, yeah, sometimes super frustrating wiring of our brains. We're about to unpack the actual science of that sting, and you're going to understand exactly why emotional pain can hurt so much. Okay, this right here, this slide gets to the absolute heart of it. Neurologically speaking, your brain processes the pain of social rejection and the pain of a physical injury in some of the exact same regions. We're talking about this area called the secondary somatosensory cortex. So when you say I'm hurt after a breakup, your brain is quite literally going, yep, I feel that. And to make matters worse, there's this little thing called the dopamine loop. See, your brain basically gets addicted to the person or the situation you've lost. It starts craving them just like an addictive drug. And this creates this horrible, painful cycle of seeking them out and then feeling withdrawal, which just traps you in a loop. It's the very reason you feel so completely stuck. So, how in the world do you break out of that loop? Well, the answer isn't to just suppress it, to push those feelings down. I mean, we've all tried that, and it just makes them come back stronger, right? The actual scientific solution is this incredibly powerful technique called cognitive reappraisal. It's not about ignoring the pain, it's about consciously, actively changing the story you tell yourself about what happened. You're giving the experience a brand new label. You want to see a masterclass in how this is done? We only have to look at one of the most famous firings in all of business history. Let's talk about Steve Jobs and how he turned what looked like a career death sentence into, well, into nothing more than a data point on his journey. So picture this. It's 1985. Steve Jobs gets publicly humiliated. He's kicked out of Apple, the company he literally built from the ground up in his garage. But instead of getting stuck, instead of clinging to what he'd lost, he pivoted. Hard. He practiced what you could call radical acceptance of his new reality. And by reframing this massive failure as a new kind of freedom, he was able to go out and found a whole new company, Next. And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? He didn't see it as the end. He actively relabeled it as the best thing that ever happened to him. It was a perspective shift. He saw it as this necessary event that actually gave him permission to be creative again, to be a beginner, free from the crushing weight of his own success. Okay, so that's a pretty inspiring story, right? But how do we actually apply that same logic to our own lives? Well, turns out there's a practical three-step protocol that we can all follow to engineer our own emotional detachment. All right, this protocol has three core parts. Super simple. First, you've got to objectify the source of your pain. Second, you run what I call a future self-audit to get some much-needed perspective. And third, you substitute. You fill that space with something new, because believe me, the brain hates a void. Let's break down exactly how to do each one. Step 1. This is all about shifting from pure emotion to calm observation. You have to stop seeing that person or that situation as your one and only source of happiness. Instead, you have to see them for what they are in this moment. A biochemical trigger. That's it. A trigger for that painful dopamine loop in your brain. Just that simple reframe is the first crucial step to taking back control. Okay, step 2, the future self-audit. I want you to ask yourself this question and be really honest. Will the version of me 5 years from now genuinely, truly care about this? Because if the honest answer is no, then in a way, you're mourning a ghost. You're pouring all this precious energy into something that has zero real power over your long-term future. And finally, step 3, and this one is absolutely crucial. You can't just stop thinking about something. It doesn't work that way. You have to replace it. Remember, the brain hates a void. It hates an empty space. So you find a new high-effort goal, start a really challenging project, train for a marathon, learn a new language, whatever it is. You have to substitute the old source of dopamine with a new one that you build for yourself. So you see what we're doing here? When you put it all together, the science of the brain, a real-world example like Steve Jobs, and these actionable steps, you get this incredibly powerful framework for change. It's all about reframing what feels like a devastating ending into what it really is, a new beginning. Please remember this. Your loss is not a judgment on your value as a person. It does not define who you are. By learning to detach and reframe, you can start to see it for what it truly is. It's a moment of release, a release from something that was holding you back, and it's freeing you up for whatever comes next. So I'm going to leave you with this one question to think about. I want you to look at your own life, at the setbacks, the heartbreaks. What's something that feels like a death sentence to you right now that you could, with this new perspective, reframe as simply a data point on the path to your next great beginning?